and it's the Economy and Politics show where we'll discuss the economy, policy, investments, and the entire socio-economic space. It's a brand new week, like I said. It's Monday, June 15, 2020, and we would like to give you some developing updates in the Nigerian economic space. Our guest for today was meant to be Dr. Suleiman Danusa, co-chair of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group Fiscal Policy Roundtable. But due to pressing developments that just came up today, we've rescheduled, and during this week, we'll have him feature on our Economy and Politics show. But let's continue this conversation on economy and, of course, policies. First, let's give you the updates on Nigeria's economic dashboard, which is being displayed on your screen now. The dashboard displays our key indices and growth, inflation, interest rates, and other key rates that you need to know this morning as you wake up, and of course, as you're in the office preparing, looking at key decisions to make. This is very key for business leaders, CEOs, government officials, and of course, key investors across the world. If you want to look into Nigeria, our economic dashboard, powered by ProShare, Nigeria's leading financial information hub, is the place to go. So let's give you the updates we have from the dashboard. The current economic growth rate for first quarter 2020 in Nigeria, GDP, is 1.87%. The inflation rate we have at this point is 12.1%. Also for unemployment, it remains 23.1%, while the misery index, yes, the misery index is still high, 55%. The interest rates, the monetary policy rates, which is controlled by the Central Bank of Nigeria, is currently 12.5%. There are several other indices you can find there. As you can see on the screen, all you need to do is to log on to www.proshange.com to get all the updates on our economic dashboard. Let's move on to the conversation. It has been a busy last week. I want to give you the current updates we have. Very interesting loaded last week. And of course, those are key things that you need to know for those who are wondering what will happen second half of the year. The build-up has begun, and let's give you the updates. First, of course, it is something that policy analysts, economists, experts have all been waiting for, and finally it came through. The Economic Sustainability Committee, chaired by Vice President Professor Yemi Osibanjo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria and GCON, submitted its report to President Muhammadu Buhari last week. This is the report that is designed to reset the Nigerian economy post-pandemic. And let's look at some of the key issues in that report. The terms of reference of the Economic Sustainability Committee was first to develop a clear sustainability plan in response to challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, identify fiscal measures for enhancing distributable oil and gas revenue, increasing non-oil revenues, and reducing non-essential spending towards securing sufficient resources to fund the plan. Thirdly, propose monetary policy measures in support of the plan. Fourth was to provide a fiscal and monetary stimulus package, including support to private businesses, with emphasis on strategic sectors most affected by the pandemic and vulnerable segments of the population. Fifth was to articulate specific measures to support the states and the Federal Capital Territory. Sixth was to propose a clear-cut strategy to keep existing jobs and create opportunities for new ones. And fifth was to identify measures that may require legislative support to deliver this plan. Other plans incorporated into the proposed Economic Sustainability Plan include the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which had been on board since 2016 and is expected to elapse in 2020. The report of the Economic Crisis Committee, headed by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Third was the Finance Act 2019, and fourth was the Central Bank of Nigeria's proposals. For those that remember that the Central Bank of Nigeria earlier this year held a Growth 2.0 forum in Abuja. Let's go to the basis of the plan. The basis of this plan was robustly to cover the following issues: the immediate challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, which have created severe economic consequences for all countries across the world, and Nigeria also being badly hit. The lockdowns, which came as a result of containing the COVID-19 pandemic, had frozen economic activities, causing massive job losses and supply chain disruptions. It had also depressed the demand for crude oil and precipitated an unprecedented oil price crash. Nigeria's dependence on oil for revenue and foreign exchange makes it particularly vulnerable in this situation. According to the Economic Sustainability Committee, it was expected that if oil prices average $30 over the rest of this year, all revenues, assuming Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation reduces joint venture operating costs by 20%, would amount to 88.4 billion naira monthly, assuming that non-oil revenue are sustained at lower level projections in the revised budget estimates. The total allocations to the Federal Account Allocation Committee for the rest of the year would then be around 485 billion naira a month. This time last year, total allocations to FAC was 669.9 billion naira monthly. The very steep decline in revenues available for sharing among governments of the Federation would have serious implications for wages, overheads, and capital expenditures at federal, state, and local government levels. With unemployment rate which remains 23.1% or converted to 20.9 million people at the end of 2018, is expected to rise to about 33.6% or 39.4 million people at the end of 2020. The ESC said if urgent steps are not taken, the major problem with unemployment of a very large youth population is the hopelessness that gives rise to criminal activities and antisocial behavior, which can ultimately create potential recruits into the ranks of insurgents. Even for those able to earn a living, the situation, according to the committee, is dire. The National Bureau of Statistics recently released a household survey of poverty in Nigeria, a 5-year study which showed that over 40% of Nigerian households earn less than 137,000 per annum. This is barely 11,000 naira per month. With the COVID-19 crisis, this poor income will drop much further. Given these indices, the National Bureau of Statistics projects that economic growth could fall by as much as minus 4.40% to minus 8.91% depending on the length of the lockdown period. The potency of the economic plans that are put in place, and in particular the amount of stimulus spending, the time-tested approach to fighting a recession is a stimulus package. The size of the stimulus package, according to the ESC, will usually determine how shallow or deep the recession will turn out to be. The ESC asks the NBS to give a model of what the macro implications of 4 scenarios could be if it had the good fortune for oil prices to average at least $30 per barrel in 2020. And post-COVID-19 pandemic, the ESC received the 4 scenarios from the NBS. Here are the scenarios. First scenario, with no stimulus, that is if simply stick to the budget of the Nigerian economy, which will decline. The growth will decline definitely by minus 4.40% at best. Scenario 2, with a stimulus of just 500 billion naira, the economy will decline by minus 1.94%. Scenario 3, with a stimulus of 2.3 trillion naira, the economy will decline with lower at minus 0.59%. And scenario 4, with a stimulus of 3.6 trillion naira, there will still be negative growth, but only of minus 0.42%. What was the general objectives of the plan of the Economic Sustainability Committee? First was to stimulate the economy by preventing business collapse and ensuring liquidity. Second was to retain or create jobs using labor-intensive methods in key areas like agriculture, facility maintenance, housing, and direct labor interventions. Third was to undertake growth-enhancing and job-creating infrastructural investments in roads, bridges, solar power, and communication technologies. Fourth was to promote manufacturing and local production at all levels and advocate the use of made-in-Nigeria goods and services as a way of creating job opportunities, achieving self-sufficiency in critical sectors of the economy, and curbing unnecessary demand for foreign exchange, which might put pressure on the exchange rate. And fifth, extend protection to the very poor and other vulnerable groups, including women and persons living with disabilities through pro-poor spending. This plan is based on 3 pillars. The first pillar consists of the real sector measures and comprises a mix of project and policy approaches which focus on the creation of jobs across the fields of agriculture and agro-processing, food security, housing construction, renewable energy, infrastructure, manufacturing, and the digital economy. The aim is to safeguard existing micro, small, and medium-scale businesses while ramping up local productive capacity by encouraging opportunities for innovation in the various sectors. The second is the fiscal and monetary measures, which outline steps that will be taken to maximize government revenue, optimize expenditure, and enshrine a regime of prudence with an emphasis on achieving value for money. The overriding objective is to keep the economy active through carefully calibrated regulatory interventions designed to de-risk the environment for local production and enterprise, galvanize external sources of funding, rationalize existing debt obligations, and boost investments in strategic sectors affected by COVID-19 pandemic while supporting the financial viability of state governments. The third pillar is implementation. This is key to the success of the plan. Each minister, according to the ESC, will be responsible for supervising the implementation of plans situated in their ministry through a ministerial implementation committee chaired by the minister. The ministerial committee will be responsible for ensuring synergy between stakeholders, especially the public and private sector. The committees shall also drive the execution of specific projects, coordinate the entire sectorial value chain, and ensure resolution of bottlenecks impeding implementation. The ESC, which is Interministerial Committee, will be responsible for general oversight of implementation and will report to the President. Expenditure will be monitored through the National M&E Framework and the Budget Office of the Federation. What are the proposed key projects from the Economic Sustainability Plan? The key projects put forward by relevant ministries to sustain economic activity, boost production, create the maximum number of jobs possible, and save foreign exchange include a mass agriculture program. Agriculture remains at the bedrock of driving this current administration's diversification plan. It is expected to bring between 20,000 and 100,000 hectares of land, new farmland under cultivation in every state of the Federation. The aim is to create millions of job opportunities, directly and indirectly, over a 12-month period. A significant number of Nigerians will be incentivized to engage in farming and agro-processing, as that is a field in which Nigeria has comparative advantage. The Honorable Minister of Agriculture and the CBN Governor have agreed a detailed plan of action in this regard. Extensive public works and road construction program. This will focus on both major and rural roads. As the country cannot afford to continue with the importation of bitumen for road construction, emphasis will now be on the use of locally available materials like limestone, cement, and granites. Options have been explored for using these materials in major federal highways. Similarly, a significant number of workers can be engaged in the construction of rural roads using stones and other materials available locally. The Honorable Minister of Works and Housing is developing an engineering concept and template for this approach in order to assist the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, which is responsible for rural roads. Mass Housing Program. This program is expected to deliver up to 300,000 homes annually, engaging young professionals and artisans who form themselves into small and medium-scale businesses within the construction industry. Such enterprises will use indigenous labor and materials working on dedicated housing sites. For instance, doors, windows, and other materials will be produced, finished or assembled at mass housing construction sites. Also, home designs can be standardized and costed with economies of scale in mind to ensure their affordability. Bouncing back, which is the summary of the economic plan, Nigeria's Economic Sustainability Plan 13.4, the construction of houses to continue uninterrupted across the country. The Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, the Central Bank of Nigeria, and the Family Homes Fund under the Ministry of Finance are making arrangements for purchase to cooperatives and for warehousing of completed houses, which will then be mortgaged or let out on rent-to-own basis. Installation of solar home systems. The proposed solar home systems project will cover up to 5 million households, serving about 25 million individual Nigerians who are currently not connected to the national grid. In view of the scale of materials required, solar equipment manufacturers will be required to set up production facilities in Nigeria, thereby offering additional job opportunities to Nigerians. In addition, installation, servicing, and payment collections are expected to provide thousands of other jobs. Strengthening the social safety net. For those of us that are conversant with this administration, part of its investments has been in the social safety net and protection of the poor. This will be achieved through an increase in the number of cash transfer beneficiaries, N-Power volunteers, and sundry traders enjoying small and micro loans through the market money and trader money schemes. The pre-existing conditional cash transfers will be extended to cover mostly the rural poor. However, on account of the current lockdown, most of the urban poor, artisans, laborers, petty traders, street vendors, cart pushers have become further impoverished. Support for micro, small, and medium enterprises. The ESC is proposing implementation of a scheme to support businesses through the MSMEs, guaranteeing off-take of items like personal protective equipment, face shields, face masks, hand sanitizers, shoe covers, soaps, etc. In this regard, the ESC expects to catalyze massive investment in light manufacturing, which will ensure that many common articles of everyday use are made in Nigeria to acceptable standard. Reduction in NAFDAC registration fees. The National Administration for Food Drug Council, NAFDAC, will provide a practical support to be initiated for MSMEs as an immediate response to support resilience. In this regard, the National Agency for Food, Drug and Administration Council has already rolled out incentives for MSMEs. These incentives are geared towards implementation of an 80% reduction in the product registration charges and total waiver of administrative charges for product license renewals. Survival Fund. These are challenging times, and the ESC identifies that. They are looking at providing payroll support to small and medium-sized enterprises so that they can keep their employees and help maintain jobs. Promotion of domestic gas utilization. To take advantage of Nigeria's abundant gas resources, it is also required to get cheaper and more friendly gas to the environment. This project will promote indigenous manufacture of gas cylinders, building of gas filling stations, and conversion of cars to promote the wide use of compressed natural gas in domestic markets. Digital technology. Not surprising, we're in a fourth industrial revolution. To foster a culture of innovation and create a wide variety of technology and ICT jobs, special attention by the ESC will be paid to the promotion of technology hubs, call centers for business process outsourcing and digitization of processes, both in government and within the private sector. Experience thus far indicates that if well harnessed, this is a sector that can create jobs on a large scale and earn foreign exchange for the nation. The ESC also brought the cross-cutting imperatives from its reports submitted to the President. It said it is further envisaged that a range of measures must be necessarily taken to undergird the implementation of the plans, enhance service delivery, and build resilience in the post-COVID-19 economy. These measures include digital identification of every Nigerian, very critical at this time, which according to them will help improve the provision of cash transfers and other benefits. Broadband connectivity to help school children have access to digital education and indeed strengthen the digital economy of the nation. Local production of all that Nigeria can, from shoes, steel fabrication, ceramics, plastics, furniture, and even building materials. Promoting strategic investments in local manufacture of generic medicines to reduce importation of expensive drugs. Establish a national research fund for medicine and pharmaceuticals funded by contributions from the Treasury Fund and corporate social responsibility expenditure of private companies. To promote the uptake of the federal government of Nigeria's savings bond to encourage all Nigerians to save a portion of their income, no matter how small. Well, the Economic Sustainability Committee plan looks robust. You can get further updates if you log on to www.procng.com to read articles and the incisive reports. We expect that the President will look into this and implementation will move swiftly. We bring you the updates on the economy again, and of course, the Senate last week approved the revised 2020 budget of the Federation, which is now 10.8 trillion naira, which was sent by President Muhammadu Buhari. The members of the upper legislative chamber passed the budget during the plenary last week, Thursday, a day after members of the House of Representatives approved the same figure. A breakdown of the figure shows that the sum of 2.48 trillion naira is for capital expenditure, and the recurrent non-debt expenditure is now 4.9 trillion naira. The executive also allocated 422 billion naira for strategic transfer, while 2.95 trillion naira is budgeted for debt service. In the same vein, 500 billion naira was earmarked as intervention funds for the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, while the health sector got a whopping 186 billion naira allocation. The budget report was presented by the chairman of the Senate Committee on Appropriation, Senator Jibrin Barau, during the plenary sessions at the Senate. The review of the budget was necessitated by the impact of COVID-19 on the global and Nigerian economy, which has adversely affected the oil price and, by extension, the revenue projections of the government. The past 2020 revised budget is 300 billion naira more than the revised budget plan that was originally submitted by President Muhammadu Buhari. It also increases the projection of the oil price by $3 per barrel, which is from $25 per barrel to $28 per barrel. The spending plan must now be sent back to the president, which is expected to be signed this week, after it might be satisfied with what was passed by both chambers of the National Assembly. Last Friday, June 12th, was a remarkable day as Nigeria marked it as Democracy Day. Note that prior to now, the Democracy Day used to be May 29, when there was a transition of government from the military to civilian. President Muhammadu Buhari addressed the nation for about 41 minutes on that should be of interest to every policy analyst, expert, and investor that looks at Nigeria. The first key takeaway was that the president re-emphasized that agriculture will remain the key to its economic diversification strategy. So for those who look at agriculture, that is a major sector that this administration is taking seriously. According to the president, the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative program will continue to deliver significant quantities of affordable and high-quality fertilizers to the farmers. This initiative has already revived 31 blending plants and created a significant number of direct and indirect jobs across the value chain. Beyond the fertilizer plants, every other key sector of the part of the economy will now become very critical. So if you're looking at investing in the economy, of course, agriculture is going to be a key driver. President Buhari said Africa presents a huge opportunity for Nigeria's export-based diversification. The government, according to him, is developing a strategy to grow intra-Africa trade through the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. For those that are aware, by July, we're supposed to take off the AFCFTA, but there's some delays. But Nigeria is looking at building its export diversification base to be relevant when this agreement takes off. A major key takeaway from his speech was the resuscitation of the Jakarta steel plant based on government-to-government financing and a public-private sector financing model. For those of you, it's been an over 2-decade project. So much talk about it. Let's see if it begins to kickstart, because it is a major pivot for industrialization. So much has been put into Jakarta, billions of naira. We need to get it running. Power is very critical to Nigeria as an infrastructure, and President Buhari said the power sector arrangement with Siemens, the German-based company, if everything goes as planned, will transmit and distribute a total of 11,000 megawatts by the end of 2023 to serve Nigerians' electricity needs. Let's see how that goes. We'll be monitoring the developments around the whole arrangement between the federal government and Siemens. An interesting part of his speech was the fact that for the first time in over 10 years, Nigeria is conducting bidding process for 57 marginal oil fields to increase revenue and increase the participation of Nigerian companies in oil and exploration and production. People have been calling for transparency, civil societies. We will be watching to see how this bidding process goes through. Also in the oil and gas sector, the president said about $200 million have been invested in the Nigerian Content Intervention Fund for indigenous manufacturers and service providers. It is interesting to see how the government is looking at encouraging local content, but for everyone, the impact is what they need to see. The Niger Delta remains the oil production treasure base of Nigeria, but nothing much to show, sadly. President Buhari, in his speech, said that the East-West Road, which is the major infrastructure in the Niger Delta area, the funding of it from the first to the fourth plank of it will be pursued with a view to completing the project by the end of 2021. We hope this is done and we'll continue to monitor that process, even the plan to carry out a forensic audit of the Niger Delta Development Commission. In terms of security, President Buhari reassured Nigerians that they will strengthen the security network while calling on states and local governments to beef up their intelligence framework. But an interesting part of that speech was the fact that they will establish a Nigeria Police Trust Fund as a public-private sector vehicle for alternative source of funding security activities. It has become very important. The Nigerian police have been working tirelessly to secure the nation, to maintain law and order, but funding of the police has become very important, from the police college to their salaries and to their welfare is very key. Let's look at COVID-19. A lot to learn for Nigeria. President Buhari set up the Presidential Task Force on coordinating activities and also ensured that there was increased intervention for sectors like the healthcare. Well, through the whole process, the President announced the employment of 774,000 Nigerians across all the local governments. That means 1,000 per local government will be employed through public works to support the activities in the economy. According to the Minister of State for Labor, for those that followed, Barrister Festus Keyamo, this will help to activate things in the economy and for the good. The COVID-19 was a learning experience for the President as he continued to create the need to deepen healthcare infrastructure in Nigeria. For those of us that followed, we saw that private sector also invested money, contributed massively to deepening our healthcare infrastructure. There are learning points from this pandemic, and we hope Nigeria will take very important building its healthcare infrastructure. In the fiscal level, the President said the government will continue to implement accountability and transparent policies through an open government partnership and transparent portal on financial transactions. Similarly, strengthening auditing and accountability mechanisms so as to ensure that rules and regulations are followed strictly. On the part of anti-corruption, the President said the agency has secured more than 1,400 convictions and also recovered funds in excess of 800 billion naira. These monies are being plowed into development and infrastructure projects across the country. According to him, with the face of dwindling resources and rising cost of governance, the Oronsaye reports, which push for rationalization of government parastatals and agencies, will be reviewed for implementation. This report has been long overdue and now is due for implementation. The federal government also assured, President Buhari assured Nigerians that the youths will be receiving core focus in developing their skills, providing them with opportunities to express their entrepreneurial research and industrial capacities, as well as ample opportunity to take leadership positions in the service of the nation. And for the media, which is a very critical part of the country, the fulcrum of the estates, the President assured of a cordial relationship and also called for responsible journalism, ensuring that the media continues to play its role. Interestingly, concerning the rising pandemic of rape, I'll call it a rising tide of rape in the country, the President assured Nigerians that the security outfits, the police, will work tirelessly to bring all those involved in the recent spate of rape and murder of young girls and women, and will also continue to ensure the country is safe for everyone. That was key excerpts from the speech of President Muhammadu Buhari. Let's go on to the Nigerian merchandise trade, which for the first quarter of 2020 slowed due to declines in both imports and exports. That was released by the National Bureau of Statistics last week. It said that total trade declined by 17.94% in the first quarter of 2020 compared to the value recorded in the fourth quarter of 2019, but increased marginally by 0.80% year-on-year. The breakdown shows that the value of total imports decreased by 21.08% in first quarter 2020 compared to the value recorded in fourth quarter 2019, but was 13.99% higher when compared with first quarter 2019. The value of imported agricultural goods was 12.02% more in first quarter 2020 than in fourth quarter 2019 and 10.62% more than in first quarter 2019. The value of raw materials imports decreased by 8.49% in first quarter 2020 relative to fourth quarter 2019 and 6.91% compared to the corresponding quarter in 2019. The value of solid minerals imports was 15.65% higher in first quarter 2020 than the preceding quarter and 20.05% compared to corresponding quarter in 2019. The value of manufactured goods imports decreased by 31.98% in first quarter 2020 compared to fourth quarter 2019 and 4.03% when compared with first quarter 2019. The value of energy goods decreased by 72.18% in first quarter 2020 on a quarter-on-quarter basis and 91.58% year-on-year. The value of other oil products imports was 14.21% higher in first quarter 2020 than in fourth quarter 2019 and 180.05% higher when compared with the corresponding quarter of 2019. Let's look at exports. Total exports value decreased 14.42% in first quarter 2020 compared to the value recorded in fourth quarter 2019 and 9.98% compared to the first quarter 2019. The value of agricultural goods exports grew 85.36% in first quarter 2020 compared to fourth quarter 2019 and 46.76% compared to first quarter 2019. The value of raw materials exports increased 60.17% in first quarter 2020 relative to last quarter but decreased by 7.08% year-on-year. The value of solid minerals exports was 16.31% lower in first quarter 2020 relative to fourth quarter 2019 and 82.17% less than the value recorded in first quarter 2019. Manufactured goods exports decreased by 12.72% in value in first quarter 2020 compared to fourth quarter 2019 and 3.86% compared to first quarter 2019. Crude oil exports decreased by 18.86% in first quarter 2020 compared to fourth quarter 2019 and 12.80% compared to first quarter 2019. Other oil products exports decreased by 1.47% in value in first quarter 2020 compared to fourth quarter 2019 and 4.89% compared to first quarter 2019. Energy goods exports were 16.76% lower in first quarter 2020 than the value recorded in fourth quarter 2019 and 53.05% lower than the value recorded in first quarter 2019. And in the African region, some good news for Nigeria. Very good news. Shareholders of Africa Export-Import Bank voted and reappointed Professor Benedict Orama as president of the Pan-African Multilateral Financial Institution for a second 5-year term. The decision was announced in Cairo following the Afrexim Bank's 27th annual general meeting of shareholders, which was held by circulation of resolutions due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation. In an acceptance statement released shortly thereafter, President Orama told shareholders that the bank's ultimate goal under his second term of office is the realization of Africa's strategic ambition to create an integral market. According to him, we want an Africa where the foundations of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement are laid expeditiously so that 84,000 kilometers of borders that have divided us for ages can begin to come down. Orama said AfCFTA will drive the industrialization of Africa, support the emergence of regional value chains, turn Africa's creative and cultural assets into engines of growth, grow jobs for the continent's youth, convey respect to Africans wherever they may be, and better prepare the continent to compete more effectively in the global markets. Professor Orama highlighted that between 2015 and 2019, Afrexim's banks disbursed more than $30 billion in support of African trade, with over $15 billion channeled towards the financing and promotion of intra-African trade. Speaking further, he said, "We will aim to double intra-Africa trade financing so that by the end of my term, it will constitute no less than 40% of the bank's total assets, with aggregate disbursement on a revolving basis over the 5 years exceeding $30 billion. In office since 2015, Professor Orama's reappointment was one of the key decisions taken by shareholders during the bank's 2020 general meeting. A resolution proposing the re-election of Mr. Stephen Louis Francois Naletambi as the director representing the Class A shareholders and Mr. Ki Chong Lee Kwong Wing as the director representing Class B shareholders was also approved by the meeting. In addition, the 2019 audited accounts of Afrexim were approved, as well as the proposal to raise an additional $500 million in equity within Afrexim Bank's current strategic plan dubbed Impact 2021 Africa Transformed. The approval to raise additional equity was in recognition that an amount of $1 billion earlier authorized to be mobilized had almost been fully raised. That's the good news for Nigeria, and congratulations to Professor Benito Rama for making Nigeria proud and indeed serving Africa, and we wish him all the best in his second 5-year tenure. But that'll be all for this new week, starting the new week with updates on economy and Africa. Economy and Politics Show is always here to give you insights into economy, policy, investment, and of course, socio-economic activities in Nigeria. It promises to be an interesting week. Join us every 9 a.m. as we engage experts, policymakers, analysts on developments in the Nigerian economy. Join our website, www.prochange.com, where you give you all these updates today. You will read rich reports, solid analysis, and breaking news stories as it affects the economy, business, and financial space. Till we come your way again, thank you for watching. Have a nice time and stay safe.